Over the past 2 years, I've consulted with approximately 250 people one-on-one, and about half of the men that I've consulted, which is about 210 or 220 of those people, have had relationship insufficiencies and problems where the women were being abusive and the men either didn't even realize she was abusive or vocally violent, or he saw the red flags but he didn't do anything about it. He didn't actually just let it go, and that happens a lot more often than you'd think. And so this is approximately about 100 different kinds of people and scenarios that I've been going through in my head. And I thought to myself, it'd be an interesting thought experiment to say this. What if a woman is being vocally violent and emotionally abusive, and the man decides that he's had enough and he hits her? Who's in the wrong necessarily? Because, well, on the one hand, physical abuse is obviously a no-no, but emotional abuse is much more difficult to tell, and it's much more precarious water to delve into and step your toes into, because it is not always clear to the person that is being abused whether or not they're actually being abused sometimes. And women are far more psychologically manipulative than a lot of men would like to think. And that's just the way that it is. Men are obviously going to be more physically aggressive because that's how they demonstrate their aggression, is through physical violence. Women do it much more through reputation destruction and making sure that your mind is jumbled in any way, shape, and form, so that the walls will feel like jello and the floor will feel like quicksand, and there's nothing that you can possibly do. And the woman's goal in any kind of manipulation tactic, 90% of the time that I've seen, is to make herself look like the victim and you be the perpetrator, when in reality it's the complete opposite. So before we go further on with this thought experiment, I want to talk about some of the different forms of emotional abuse or gaslighting that I've seen, and not just in my own life, but also with people that I've worked with. And so I've got a list here that I'll go through. There's about 10 or so here. So making jokes at your expense. And you know what? I'll put this in the description box as well, so that you can check this out while I'm reading through it. So making jokes at your expense, indirectly insulting you or putting you down, minimizing your contributions or belittling your achievements, insinuating that you are too naive, dumb, or uninformed to accomplish a task or do anything about whatever problem that is before you, making jokes that undermine your opinion, using passive-aggressive humor to comment on your inadequacy or to ensure that you don't feel good enough or unworthy of whatever it is that's happening in the situation. Openly violating your boundaries. So obviously you set a boundary. This person openly violates it and has no remorse. Makes you want to move through fear only. Okay. Unteachable and wants to enforce an agenda. You can almost always tell when somebody's a narcissist or is capable of emotional abuse when they are not teachable. When they believe that they know the answer and that's that. On the one hand, if you're doing something in the form of justice and righteousness, that's a great trait. But still, that person that is doing something that is out of righteousness and truth, that person is going to be teachable still and is going to rejoice in being corrected, as the Bible talks about. But this kind of person is just going to want to enforce an agenda, and they're going to refuse to apologize. That's the next one. And then finally, they're going to do emotional blackmail. So this will look like something, I have a couple examples here. Something that I've heard in the past is, you'd be nothing without me. And then another thing I heard in the past was, you don't know how good you have it. And another thing that I've heard in the past was, if you were actually a good person, this wouldn't bother you. So these are different forms of abuse that can take place. Now that we've outlined this situation, now we can look a little bit more further at this thought experiment. Well, okay, if I aggravated openly and purposefully a lion, and the lion decides to lash back, is it the lion's fault? Like, this is kind of where we're going with this thought experiment, right? Because it seems to me that a lot of women want men to be these men that are always capable of walking away. Oh, a good man will walk away. I saw this clip of this Yellowstone is the name of the short, or the show or whatever. I saw this clip, and the woman was intentionally aggravating a man who is like twice her size, and she intentionally aggravated, and so finally he hit her, and she said like a real man would have walked away. And it made her look like, and I don't know the context of the clip obviously, but this was another thing that I was thinking about following this kind of stuff, was like, if that was an actual show, if that show was an actual reality situation, and the woman was instigating and trying to upset this man that is twice her size, who knows that she's going to be incapable of self-preservation in this mode of being by going through with this behavior, why would you try to put yourself in that position? Why would you try to put yourself in that position? And why is it always on the men to perform? This is something I cannot seem to get so many women to see. Like, they'll see it, but a lot of women will they don't want to take accountability for it. And the reason for this is because, well, it goes to show that they don't even really know themselves. And the fact that we have women that are in leadership positions in our institutions and such that think in this way ought to terrify the majority of people, in my opinion, because there's simply no other form of communication. If a woman is communicating violently and she's being emotionally abusive with this kind of stuff that I just outlined to the man, and the man has walked away, let's say, if the man has walked away from the situation, but she tries to follow him, which I've had this happen to me, where I've rejected a woman and she cannot take it, and so she like stalks me, and I can't officially say, oh yeah, this woman is stalking me, but I've been able to document things that indicate that this is actually the case. And I had no clue that women were this creepy. I had no clue that women were capable of this kind of callous behavior until I was attractive and I made myself into somebody. I had no clue what women were truly capable of. I knew that everybody was capable of evil, but I didn't think women's form of evil was just so calculative and very callous and capricious. I didn't think that was the case. Men are much more open about their aggressive concerns and their intentions to do harm if push comes to shove, vocally and verbally. This is one of the reasons also why you see men. We know that things can get aggressive physically pretty fast if things start to escalate in a negative and derogatory way. So we know that threat is there. And this is, I think, one of the reasons why men are endowed with more logic, is because they have to be. As leadership positions require, and man is supposed to be the leader for women according to the Bible, then the man has to be more logical, and by definition, a man would have to be capable of being more compassionate. It's not to say that women cannot be compassionate or as compassionate as men, but on the grand scale, when a man is healthy and a woman is healthy, for a majority of that population, a percentage of that population, let's say there's a healthy percentage of a population. We take 25% of a population that's healthy, let's say. The majority of the people that are going to be capable of compassion and higher in openness and compassion, while also being high in industriousness and conscientiousness, is likely going to be the men. It's not going to be the women. And it's not to say that women cannot be compassionate, but their industriousness and conscientiousness are not going to be as prevalent. And so I would say in this instance and this situation, I would say they're both in the wrong, men and women. The man that hits the woman and the woman that instigates the man, they're both wrong. But you can't really blame the man for doing what he did necessarily. Like, of course, he ought to take accountability and responsibility, but if the woman instigated it and she knew that this person was capable of defeating her physically, and women that think that they can take a man, they just have never been in a martial art gym or anything like that, because even the strongest women that I've seen in martial arts, and there was a black belt, she couldn't take on the orange or purple belt, okay, that I saw. And it's only because, like, yes, she's more skilled, but it's just the physical size is just, there's nothing like it. I mean, the guy that was a orange and purple belt or whatever it was at the time, which is, for those of you that don't know martial arts, specifically in the ranking system that I was in, it was white, yellow, orange, purple, blue, green, brown, black. So very simple. And so obviously this black belt woman was far more advanced than the orange or purple belt man. But the man that they were sparring with and doing stuff with, like, she just couldn't, like, it didn't matter how hard she hit, nothing was going to take him. And the only thing that I probably think would have been able to get him is if she did some kind of form of jiu-jitsu or some kind of grappling movements. But even then, I mean, the probability of him being able to outmatch her strength is highly probable. So there's just certain things that women are doing that don't make sense. And there's so much pressure on men to perform nowadays. There's so much pressure for men to do certain things and to operate in a certain way. And it's like the women just get off scot-free. I don't understand the world we live in sometimes when it comes to this. I mean, I do understand it, but at the same time, I can't really just sit back and watch these men get abused anymore and have nothing happen to the women. They get no accountability for this. There's no kind of consequences. And then we wonder why the state of society is the way that it is. We wonder why so many people are breaking up in their divorces, their families. We wonder why there's so much cheating and lying and nobody trusts anybody. We wonder about these things. And yet we don't look to the consequences of people's actions. We're giving people, and don't get me wrong, God's going to judge these people one way or another. And I firmly believe that, and I firmly have faith in that. But I don't think the precedent going forward, and if the presupposition that we are giving to women is, well, you can instigate a man, and the presupposition for that is you're going to likely never be having to be held accountable for your actions with any kind of consequence. If that's the presupposition most of these women are operating under, guess what? They're going to go lie. They're going to go cheat. They're going to be doing these kinds of abusive tactics. And the men can't do shit about it because The whole system is rigged against men nowadays. And that's just one of the reasons why I think I'm just standing up for men really right here. And I'm not saying that, again, the situation, that the hypothetical thought experiment that we just did and covered, both of them were wrong. I don't think men should hit a woman ever. I don't think that's going to be a reasonable reaction, but I think a man must be able to be walking away from a woman in that situation. And if she continues to follow him, though, and agitate him, well, then, that's a different story. And you got to look at the whole context. Again, I still don't think that it's reasonable to hit a woman in that case, but can you blame the man? Can you blame, like, she's trying to intentionally poke the bear, so to speak. And it just seems as though if the man even did hit her and he was able to prove that she was abusive, she was emotionally abusive, she was verbally and vocally violent, the consequences for the women are still absent for the most part, it seems to me. And so I'm just hoping that we get more of a word out there on these kinds of thought experiments and the unreasonability, the unreasonable collective attitude towards these kinds of topics. Because it seems to me that people are just out of their minds when it comes to this kind of stuff. They really just, they don't really thoroughly think through the consequences, because women will probably see this, see the title and be like, oh, well, a man, of course. It's like, well, really think about that. Think about why you're doing what you're doing to begin with. Does it really make any kind of logical sense and reasonable sense to try to instigate somebody that if there weren't any laws in place, could tear you limb from limb if they really wanted to? Why, do you really think that it's a smart thing to do? So anyways, I hope this was useful and insightful for you guys. I do appreciate everybody moving from the YouTube platform over to X, Rumble, and Instagram recently. I appreciate your guys' extra support. We do have the Seek Retreat coming up on February 8th. That is going to be a meditation retreat, a virtual meditation retreat for all day. It's going to be an all-day event. We're going to have an opening and closing meeting that day with guided meditations throughout the day. So if you do want to sign up for that, shoot me an email at regalchange@gmail.com. And I appreciate everybody for tuning in, and peace be with you all. Till next time.